I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
We're back.
Bizarre.
Guys, welcome back. We are back with The New Pope, Season 2, Episode 8, the 8th episode. I'm your girl, Jessie Zahner, and I'm here with my boy,
Your boy
LG.
LG here in the house with my girl Jessie. You know, we get down. I can't believe the season's coming to an end.
I know, I'm so sad. It's getting so good. Like, it was really good at the beginning, the first episode, then it started, like, dragging, and now we're back to the good stuff.
100 miles an hour.
So this episode was 100 miles an hour. So we're going to do a recap for you guys, go over the most scandalous pope, which Al kills. It's crazy. You got to hear this. And then we're going to go into predictions for the season finale, which should be really interesting. So let's just get right to it, because there's like a lot going on this episode. Finally, we find out a little bit more about Bauer. He starts out the episode really with Voiello.
Right? Yeah, he goes to like basically pull him back out of retirement, right?
Yeah.
You know, just when he's out, they pull him back in.
Right.
But I mean, he knows Voiello's too valuable of an asset to just like, you know, sit by the sidelines. And you know, and he obviously he points out some things that are mutually benefit both of them, and that basically they both want to save the papacy, right?
Did you find it odd? I didn't even think about this, but how out of touch Voiello was with things that were going on, like that Bauer pointed out to him?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, I think he was one of those things, once Voiello stepped down, he was like, okay, I'm done. This is it for me. He didn't know that Lenny was back. And there was one other thing he didn't know, too, right? There was something else he didn't know.
Yeah, well, he didn't know the Pope was an addict.
Yeah,
and that he was going through withdrawal.
Exactly. And he seems to know everything. But, like, yeah, you'd think he'd be a little bit more streetwise. But
right. I know. Yeah, that shocked me.
That was crazy. That was a hidden secret that only a few people knew. I'm glad they kept something a secret that everybody didn't know. Because if there's always a secret that everybody knows, it's not really a secret anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. And actually, they talk about that later in the episode, which I'll bring up. But I found this beginning with Voiello and Bauer to be really interesting, because we find out that Bauer sent Essence to kind of threaten Sofia. So then I was like, oh my gosh, are Voiello and Bauer working with the Terrible Triad against Sofia? And they were worried that she was going to like tell on them or something. So then I'm like, oh my God, is everybody going behind her back? But then we instantly like find out. They just were like leading her down a different path because, and then, you know, Voiello unfortunately got let go. And they're like, this is just a little bump in the road, but we're going to get him and take him down.
Just give her a little nudge to make her find out that her husband's cheating on her. So yeah, it's funny to see like who's finally pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And we do realize too that Sofia, that she's not just playing dumb. She really doesn't know what her husband's doing, and she doesn't necessarily like it.
Right. Yeah. And so Essence is, I guess, working with Bauer, and
he's Bauer's thug,
totally
his right-hand
creepy.
man.
Like, oh my God.
He's as heavy as Hitman.
Yeah. So then, I mean, this episode is so heavy with Bauer and Essence, right? Because then they go see Faisal. This is what
Poor Faisal, man.
Yeah. Oh my God.
They're gaffling him up, and then it's funny when Bauer's like, "Okay, I'm gonna give you to 7."
What is the significance of 7? I have to look that up actually, because he keeps saying that. But yes,
7 is a godly number, the number of creation, right? Because God created the world in 7 days.
That's a good point.
And
he keeps saying, "I'm God." Remember?
You said it yourself, Jess. There it is. You said it yourself. But he doesn't want to get to that. He's like, don't make me go there, you know. Stop me around 4 or 5.
7 is the cardinal number.
Okay.
Equivalent
Lucky
to
7.
the sum of 3 and 4. Yes, I knew that. I know simple addition. But yeah, so what did you think about like that scene with Faisal? Because I thought Faisal was totally just like in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
But then he's like, okay, I have one question. Did you do it? Like, I'm going to count to 7. I don't even want to get to 5. Tell me the answer. And then Essence is up in his face, like counting with his fingers.
Step, he gets closer and closer.
You are creepy.
That's crazy.
So what did you think? What do you think Faisal's deal is?
That was crazy. I mean, that was the whole thing I was texting you about. Okay, Faisal apparently, he, without saying anything, when he becomes crestfallen, he bows his head. So Bauer interprets that to him to be admitting to whatever he was asking him. I still don't know what he's referring to. I was like, well, did he kill? Are you saying that he somehow poisoned maybe the previous pope? But then we find out that Bauer actually thinks that Lenny did that like from a coma.
I forgot to bring that up.
Yeah.
I know. Oh my God. Yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So yes, going back to that, I totally forgot. Bauer tells Voiello it wasn't us that killed Pope Francis II, it was definitely Lenny, because Lenny was in a coma and he lifted a finger, and at that, like the next second or something, like he dropped
crazy.
dead. So it was another miracle that Lenny killed
just
this
has
guy.
like the power of God just zapped from his hands.
Oh my
Bam,
gosh,
boom.
it's
You're
so
dead.
funny.
You live. I walk around. I astroplane. I know everything.
Yeah, so we don't know what if Faisal's like admitting this. I think Faisal doesn't speak English, and so he's like, "What the hell are you talking about? I'm not going to say yes or no." And like,
he doesn't know what he's admitting to.
yeah. So I don't know. So if anybody out there knows,
Please
or
help
what
us
do
out.
you think about it? I know we have some
Yeah.
viewers that have like already seen this. Is Faisal guilty? Like, I don't know. I didn't think he was.
I think it's either he's the perfect what do you call it, patsy? Because we talked about that, you know, like who's this guy? It's supposed to be that's not really supposed to be there. So I don't know. He's capable of all kind of things, or he could just be totally innocent. We don't know.
Yes, exactly. So just going more about the number 7, because it's brought up later. I was just like, I'm curious about it now, because it's a highly spiritual number that's associated with intuition, inner wisdom, and deep inward knowing. And he does say he's God, so.
I know, right? It's funny, and it's like people always will even allude to the fact that maybe, you know, Lenny's a saint or God-like, but he's the first one who says, like, yeah, I am God.
Right,
That's
I know.
crazy.
I love him, though. Yeah. He's a badass. So then we find out Pope John Paul III, he's like up in the Italian mountains, just like hiding away because he's so embarrassed by the whole going through withdrawal on TV.
But I love it that Sofia comes with him, and she just like knows what to say to him,
I know.
what to do, just how to breathe on him.
Oh, I know, it was so creepy. Okay, so the whole thing with him up there is creepy because like first his boy Danny, he's like, do what you do best or whatever. You're like seductive. It's like, okay. So he's there, and then it gets really weird. Like, okay, so they go skiing, right? And like we find out more about Adam's death. You know, we knew that he was in like the skiing accident, but we don't know why John's getting blamed for it. And turns out he was like high on heroin. I guess if that's what you call it, being high on heroin, because I don't really think
whatever it was, he was too out of it when his brother got in an accident.
Have you ever seen anybody like high on heroin?
When somebody's high, they're just basically nodding out.
Right.
Yeah.
So how was he skiing?
I mean, I'm suppose he could ski a little bit, but beyond that, he probably.
But then he was nodding out on the mountain when his brother was dying.
Probably the minute he stopped, he started nodding out and he couldn't get back up.
So he's watching his brother die. He can't get him out, and so that's what we find out because they're skiing together. And they're like pro skiers, right? And then all of this sudden, out of nowhere, nothing happens, but Sofia just goes off into the woods and like almost crashes. It's like, did you just have like a lapse of memory of how to ski for like 1 minute?
They do that thing where they juxtapose, like, is it Sophia skiing? Is it the brother? They always do that.
So, that's so funny you say that because yes, at first I thought it was Sophia and him, but then I was like, oh, maybe that was a flashback to him and his brother. But then we find out because she comes back like afterwards and he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah. And yeah, they go through all this weird, creepy shit. So like she gets really close to him. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to make out. Like what's going to happen? And then she's like putting mascara on him. I'm like, weird, like really weird.
Okay. She's like, so what does she say? Makeup represents what? A new beginning.
Yes.
Let's basically get his swagger back, like when we saw him like with the eyeliner and mascara in the beginning, right?
Right.
It kind of reminds me of his old punk rock days.
Right. Yeah, and like the article came out in Vanity Fair, I think. You know, everybody's loving him now because they're like, oh, there's like this different side to you. But then they go on the whole thing, they're out talking about something. He's like, come breathe on me one more time. I'm like, what is going on?
I love it.
And then he's like, and then I'm never going to see you again or something like that.
It's okay. See, he allows himself, and I almost feel like that's a lot of these people, even Lenny, I feel like they allow themselves this small window of indulgence via the sip of the cherry Coke or looking at Sophia's legs. It's like, no, we can't ever consummate this, but if you just blow in my ear, that's enough for me. Even when we saw the nuns watching over Lenny, you know what I mean?
Totally,
and they just clean around his, his groin area, and then they're like, whoo, passing out. So, okay.
No, that's basically what's going on with these two. It's like the weirdest thing. It's just like, just stop being Pope and just like hook up with her because like I'm over this. And also like she's over her husband.
Right,
so,
true.
So in the meantime, I found this to be like just the best part of the show. So Spalletta is like going to threaten Gutierrez basically because he's like, I hear you were like really close to Lenny and like you guys aren't going to be friends anymore because like I know this stuff about you. And I just put this like bulletin out about like how people are going to be punished for like things they're not supposed to be doing. And I'm like, oh no, like what's gonna happen?
I'm so glad Gutierrez stood his ground.
I know, same. So he basically like talks back to him. He's like, yeah, did you follow your own rules?
Basically.
And he's just like, peace. And then did you see what happens after that?
Yeah, who's it? He has that little
guy
interlude with the cardinal.
Yeah, like the guy with the glasses. Who the hell is he? Well, number one, it's just the guy with the glasses.
He's just the guy who's there as like a plant, basically to like get dirt on him, seduce him, and that he's one of the guys they actually like bring back a picture of him, right? They don't just have a picture. They have a picture of Spoleto in the threesome, right?
Yeah,
and like with this guy too, supposedly.
I know, and that guy like laughed about it. That guy's so weird. So the glasses guy. So yeah, he leaves. He walks out the room because he's all pissed because he just got like, you know, owned by Gutierrez, which I was so proud of him for.
And it's particularly, I'm sorry, but particularly because it wasn't just that he had the comeback, you know, about, yeah, well, you don't follow your own rules, but also the fact that we knew his relationship with Lenny is too strong. He's not going to let him bully out of his relationship with Lenny.
Yeah. And so he walks out of the room to the guy with the glasses, and he's like, you're still in love with him. And then they start making out. It's so funny because you know what? Remember back, like, in the second or third episode, where the Pope and Gutierrez have a really weird interaction, and there's a guy standing outside looking in the window.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know who that... It's just like that tall guy. I didn't think that was Spoleto.
Yeah.
And then people were saying, no, you have to understand that's Spoleto. Like, look at his face. But, like, for some reason, I thought Spoleto and that guy were different, but now I know. They're the same guy.
Jessie, I think...
Did you know that?
No, well, yeah, I remember that whole dynamic exactly the way you described it, but I think... I don't know, the filmmaker intentionally is being oblique and effing with us by casting people who look alike.
Like Voiello and his buddy.
Like Voiello and his
Hernandez,
buddy, you know, and it's like, is it this person? Is it that person? And they intentionally have the same, like, haircut, and, you know, and Thomas Albrecht looks like Bauer, except he's clean-shaven. I don't know. I think he's intentionally he does a lot of stuff visually where he wants to mess with us.
Yeah, so it is that guy. It's the guy that, remember when they went to... John Paul III's house before he became Pope, and he knocks on the door, and Gutierrez opens it, and that's Spoleto, and then he shuts the door.
Well, I didn't remember.
Somebody was telling me that, and I was like, no, it's definitely not. It's definitely not the same guy, but it actually is, and I just am now realizing that it's actually him. Even though we've watched every single episode of this, every single episode of the Young Pope, I'm like, that's not the same guy.
Bauer
it is.
17.
It's so confusing. Well, it's so funny because he looks really tall in some scenes. In the scenes where he's with Voiello, that's why.
I thought it was just me. It's like sometimes he's tall and sometimes he's short. Yeah,
it's so weird.
Okay, and again, talking about not just who he's with, but I think that's the filmmaker too, intentionally trying to confuse us. Like sometimes the camera will be up here, sometimes the camera will be down there.
Exactly. So it's just. So basically, after all that, while Sofia's with the Pope, she basically tells him, like, we need Voiello back because he's basically, like, the brains behind everything. So John Paul III goes to see Voiello, and he basically wants him back.
Yeah, we need you back. And he's like, okay, two things need to happen. But basically, the two things aren't really things that are hard to agree with. He's like, basically, if you're going to be the Pope, I'm going to protect you at all costs.
Right.
Like, thank you. I appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like, the Pope cannot be blackmailed. And basically, I think that we had talked about this. I have some misgivings about Voiello, everything he does. That's hardcore and twisted and evil. Supposedly all being done for the good of the Pope. But maybe, I mean, for the good of the papacy. But maybe it's to the extent that he does want to protect the Pope. But I don't know. Tell me, you don't think it's a little bit disingenuous of his character? Because he totally tried to subvert, and I felt like maybe blackmail Lenny, right?
Yeah.
So, or maybe did he just want to bend him to his will? Maybe he wants to control the Popes, but he doesn't totally want to expose them.
Okay. Yes. I think he wants to control the Popes, because I think the problem with Lenny was when Lenny came in, they thought that they could control him, and then he quickly realized that he couldn't, and so he was losing control, but he didn't know what to do. But in the end, like, they became buddies, you know. With this guy, he knows he can run him, I think, for the most part.
And thank God. I mean, you know, I'd rather him have Voiello. Voiello probably knows what's going on with his secret, but he's not going to exploit it. I guess it's like in safe hands. It's like a good friend of yours,
right?
You know, who's like the big bully on the block who knows your secret, as opposed to somebody who's an enemy who knows your secret.
Right. So. Well, and he knows everybody else's secret for the most part. And now Bauer does, and he's helping him out, so like they can figure it out. But not only that, what else was I going to say about the Pope and Voiello? So, which Voiello did so good. Not only did he, like, he's a smart, he knows everything, so he's coming back. But like when he left in a way that everybody took his side then, so when he left, people weren't like, oh, that guy is such a pain in the ass, he's so manipulative. Like he left on a good note,
he left
doing
doing
good
favors for the nuns and
right
stuff.
So when he's coming back, like everything's working out in his favor, right? Like the nuns had this talk with Spoletta about the orphan thing, and like they tape him. And so
I hate kids and orphans.
I know. Oh, it's so good. So it's just like everything's working out just in his favor, just like we needed it to work out. So.
And then Bauer, I don't know if you're gonna get to this, but Bauer had been recording them, right? The little threesomes.
Oh my God.
That's Leopold goes and finds the underage prostitute.
Yes.
They bring her back in the mix. So they got footage on all of them.
Oh man, that was so good. Yeah. So Bauer and Essence they find the girl, they take her to the Terrible Triad, they call, because they want to take him down, right? And they have all the pictures and videos, and I'm just like, oh, this is too good.
Yeah, it was like an orchestra.
But do you think that they're going to go down that easy?
It looks like it. To put it this way, I don't know. I know Spoleto is. We don't know about Thomas. He seems to want to have a lot of fight left in him.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to go down swinging.
Because he's like, oh, what do we get in return?
Right.
They're like, you don't get shit. Like, we're not. This is not how it's going to work. It's so great because that's when he brings up the 7 again. He's like, I'm going to count to 7 and then something. And then he also talks about like threatening people. He very rarely threatens people. So then he goes to that where he's like about to threaten those 3. Right. And then he's like, okay, I'm not going to threaten you. I'm catching, like, Bauer, you're so stupid.
That's the difference between me and a criminal. A criminal makes threats.
Yeah.
I don't have to make a threat.
I'm God. I'm just going to tell you what to do and you're just going to do it.
Basically.
Oh my gosh. He's such a badass, but I just love it.
Yeah, he is.
Some other, like, just random parts throughout this episode was like the millipede gets brought up finally. Adam thought the millipede was God, and the Pope mentions that the millipede's Satan.
I was wondering, that whole thing went totally over my head, but now it makes sense. Okay.
Does it?
Yeah. So what is that saying? Is it's like, what is in the eye of the beholder? I don't know.
I don't know what it means.
It didn't leave me with any more clarity.
No, same. I have no idea what the deal with that is.
I don't know. One person, it's easily to be fooled. Whatever.
Yeah.
Everything's up to your own interpretation. I don't know.
And then also, like, a really great part of this episode was the funeral for Girolamo. I felt I had no idea. Like, I really didn't know what was going on because I thought he was moving when Don Mimo was like holding him and crying. And then we quickly find out that, he's passed away. And his dad's like, upset. And he's like, I'm going to take care of the funeral and all of his friends will be there. And he's like, he doesn't have any friends. And Voiello puts together like the most extravagant funeral ever for this guy. Right.
You thought it was what a saint would have died or something.
Oh my gosh. I know. How great was it? Did you love it?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, the show plays on irony because the person you would think who had the least amount of friends, this guy who's invalid, who can't talk, who's confined to a wheelchair, you'd think he wouldn't have any friends. He can't communicate with anyone. But of course he has thousands of friends because this is the new Pope. Of course he has thousands of friends.
Right.
So they have to play with all these perceptions.
But this is like what they're doing to make us like Voiello. Like, Voiello's so manipulative and, does all these criminal things while he's there. But, like, I do love Voiello. Like, I was so sad when he had to step down. But he gives the best speech about this kid and basically says, like, this guy's like what nobody else is. He's the best friend that you could ever, have. And that's why I'm inviting all you guys here because, you should be his friend.
And everybody respects Voiello, so that's why they're showing up, right?
They have, like, Italian leaders, everybody that's from the Vatican, the Pope's giving the mass, and it's just like, and Voiello walks down the aisle with his dad. It's just so cute. And it's, like, so sad. Everybody's crying, and it just shows, like, a really, like, human, kind side of Voiello, which you don't see anywhere else. And even he admits it. He's like, he's my only friend. And he's basically like the only love that he has in his life aside from the soccer team that he's like obsessed with.
Right.
And you like really see that here.
Yeah, and it's, well, who else could be friends with Voiello? Because you'd always be worried about him like stabbing you in the back.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. It's like he's friends with the guy who like can't actually talk.
Yeah.
But
it's so sweet.
It's a beautiful
I loved
friendship.
it. Yeah, I loved it. So now I'm like thinking, what's Voiello going to be up to next? Is he going to just like give 0 Fs and just like go crazy? But Lenny's back. And he has a plan on how he's going to reintroduce Lenny to the public. What did you think?
I love it. I love their whole their media strategy, but even more importantly, I'm waiting to find. I thought that I was waiting to see if Voiello was going to be like, okay, well, Lenny's back now, so this has to be part of the plan. But he isn't like that. He's basically like, oh, you and Lenny have to sit down. The two popes have to sit down and come face to face to discuss, basically who's going to be the new pope, right?
Right.
Or the future of the papacy.
So I kind of got confused about everything because I, for some reason, thought Bauer did not want Lenny back in.
Yeah, this is what I took from it. He was basically saying that we have to, when he's talking about the bringing down the triad, he's like, we have to, and he goes to Voiello and he's like, we have to prop up
John Paul
Branagh, because he's weak and we have to help him. And it's weird. He doesn't even insert till the very end. Oh, by the way, that Lenny's back.
Yeah.
But I don't think he necessarily knows too what to do at that point. I think he's used to juggling 1,000 things in his head. So right now, Branagh is the Pope, so we have to prop him up until Lenny's ready to go.
So you're hoping, or you're thinking that they don't mind Lenny being back?
I don't think, and plus I think Bauer does know that he can't really do anything about Lenny. Like, it's for him to say he's God when the one person who can like do anything is really Lenny.
Yeah, that's true. So that I don't know if that's going to turn into like a battle between those two. I'm not really sure. A couple other just little points is later in the episode, towards the end, somebody's talking to Sofia. And they mention your ex-husband. So
did they say ex?
Yeah. So I don't know if they're just speaking like that or if they're
I didn't catch the
officially
ex
done.
part. Good catch.
But yeah, so that's interesting. And then the very end scene with Pope John Paul, he's like undressing from his like Pope outfit.
Right.
And then you see Lenny completely naked in the pool in an empty pool looking at the Pope outfit. So it's like he's taking off the Pope thing. This is what I'm taking it as. And he's giving the reins back to Lenny.
And
he's
about
taking
to put it
over.
on, yeah.
But also, why is he standing in an empty pool naked?
Because this is the new Pope and it has to be surreal and sexual and all these other things to it to make it.
Is it really happening? Is he really standing naked in a pool and like outside somewhere we don't even know?
Or is it all? And maybe Lenny is astroplaning in his mind to that. I don't know.
It's just so weird.
Yeah,
so
it's surreal. It's surreal.
Yeah. So I hope he comes back as the Pope. But that's basically all that happens this episode. It was
a lot.
Packed with stuff, and it was very entertaining. And I'm so sad that next episode's the last episode. But until then. We still have more scandalous popes, so we're going to go right ahead with Al's segment.
And
most scandalous pope.
The one thing, Jess, we will never run out of is scandalous popes.
Yes, exactly.
So, for this new scandalous pope section, we're going to talk about Pope Sergius III. And as a friend of Pope Stephen VI, a.k.a. the cadaver trial fan. He was that guy's friend. It should come as little surprise that Sergius III was also not a great pope. Sergius came to power at a time when several players laid claim to the title, and after declaring a number of his rivals as anti-pope. So he's just basically, you're an anti-pope, you're an anti-pope, you're an anti-pope, I'm the real pope. He's also said to be the father of Pope John the 11th. So it seems like he spread his seed. He did a whole lot.
Yes.
There it is. Another scandalous pope for the pile.
Yes. So, oh my gosh, these scandalous popes are crazy. I love hearing about them, though.
It gives us context.
It does, yes. So, and now we will move on to our last segment of the episode, which is predictions, which is going to be like really hard this week.
Right.
Because there was no preview for next week. Did you know that? Because you don't like watching the previews because you don't like to cheat. I like to cheat. I like spoilers. I like cheating. I like to try to figure it out. And like there's nothing.
But I noticed my DVR cut off, so that made sense. There was no spoilers. It cut off right at the very end. Who we didn't see? We didn't see anything with Esther. So.
I know. Okay, so actually, speaking of that, there was one scene where they're in a house and there's a video of the terrorist guy just staring at the TV, which is also very creepy.
Yeah.
And there's a kid watching it and then a girl with brown hair. Is that Esther's kid?
I don't know. That's a good question.
And who's the brown-haired girl? Is she the girl with the hoodie?
I'm
so confused.
Okay, Jess, I hadn't even made that connection, but that makes sense. One of them was Esther's kids.
Yeah.
But also, just the fact that, that image alone is so scary. So maybe the audience can help us out. Who do you think those kids are? And I don't know. I predicted the terrorist attack last week.
Yeah.
But what will be the I guess the denouement, the outcome of this political unrest? Where will things stand? I guess with the papacy and Islam. I don't know. That's a good question.
Right. So. What do you think's going to happen next week?
I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna. Well, I think hopefully I'd like to see Islam and Catholicism come together in some type of truth, though I don't see it happening.
Yeah, same.
I don't know. I'm too naive.
What do you think's going to happen between Lenny and John Paul III?
I think ultimately John Paul III will be happy to give the papacy back to Lenny.
Yeah.
But I think he'll do it in a way that's dignified, and we want to see Brian just go fade off into the sunset or into the snow of Switzerland with Sofia.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to see.
So I'm having trouble trying to figure out what's going to happen, because at the end of the episode it looks like he's going to step down. That's what it looks like they're foreshadowing. Like he's going to step down. That's why he's taking his clothes off, and then we have Lenny putting his clothes on, or looking at like he's going to put his clothes on. But the thing about John Paul III is even though he's like depressed and sad and weak and fragile, he is also like totally full of himself and narcissistic in ways. So I'm like, he's not just going to give this up, right?
Well, there's something definitely to be said. It didn't just land in he's not without ambition. It didn't just, he was able to serve as this interim pope for a reason. And like the fact that he was able to have the stature he does have is because, he basically assumed the writing of his brother and stole this credit. So the degree of I guess what I'm saying, of cunning he does have serves a purpose. He's not totally feckless.
Yes. So I don't know if we're going to have like a battle between Lenny and Pope John Paul III, a battle between like the terrorism and like the Catholic Church, Bauer and the Triad. One other thing I wanted to point out about Bauer, you notice he's always eating oysters, like a ridiculous amount of oysters. So like all these like little hints I'm just like curious about. So I looked at, you know something about oysters?
Well, just what everybody else knows, they stand for virility, right?
Yeah.
So he's like Mr. Testosterone, like get it done, lay his junk on the table. I don't know, you tell me.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like I'm like, he's always eating oysters. Now he's talking about the number 7. He's always getting these thumbs up text messages on this like ancient phone that probably doesn't even exist anymore, right?
Right, with the thumbs up.
But oysters in dreams symbolize beauty, humility, wealth, and wisdom.
All I could think of was fertility, strong like bull, but
Yeah, so that really doesn't help me in any way. Like he has wisdom about like weird stuff going on. So I don't know.
He's wise and he's strong.
So I'm just curious to see. I think something's going to happen with the Pope's butting heads, and like Voiello's going to be in the middle of it. And I don't know, but I hope they don't kill Lenny. I don't think they will. Okay. I don't think they'll kill Lenny, only because there is going to be a 3rd season.
Okay.
But
wow.
I just hope they don't. I'll be really, really sad.
Yeah, I don't know. Plus, I don't think it makes sense from a plot point again to have Lenny like die again. I hope not.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
We'll see.
But we will be back here next week for the finale of the new Pope, and I'm so sad it's ending because it's getting so good.
And this is the time for me to get together with my homegirl Jess.
Yes.
We see each other once a week. We get to talk shop, talk about the Pope, catch up on all this.
I know. And then we're gonna have to wait another 3 years, and then. Maybe you'll have like 18 more babies by then. I don't know. But until next week, Al, tell everybody where they can find you.
Everybody, your boy Al Gragg. You can find me at ALG_Jamaicahouse on Instagram.
And you can find me all over social media at Athletic. And we'll see you guys next week.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.